Hey there, welcome back to the Well Balanced Mind. I'm Shannon, Rollins, your host, clinical hypnotherapist and coach located in Orlando, Florida. And this show, if it's your first time this show, we really talk about insights to understanding your mind, understanding your energy, and how to live a healthier and happier life inside out, where I invite expert guests on to come along with me and teach you the ways of just being overall healthy and happy. And I'm really excited for my guest today. I have a special guest. Monica is one of my special guests, Monica Heiz. And when I say that she's a health guru, I'm not kidding. I think she knows everything about health. What she really does is helps people find balance in their everyday life with healthy living techniques. What's really interesting when Monica and I met is we both discovered that we both had the same corporate health and wellness background, and she went on to get so much more training into nutrition, lifestyle, physical activity to help people, coaching, all of these things, teaching, doing classes, and she's very, very active in actually the Lake Nona community, which is South Orlando community. And so I invited her on today because I knew there was a slew of topics that we could have her help us cover. So Monica, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm really excited to be chatting with you.
Thank you, Shannon, and thank you for that lovely introduction. I'm really grateful to be here today.
Yeah, and so when Monica and I were talking about the show and we were really kind of brainstorming what some topics are, really wanted to bring a topic that we haven't talked about yet. And as you know, I usually talk about ways that we can enhance our mental well-being. And Monica had the great topic of risk-taking and what it does for our mental health and our mental well-being. And Monica, I just want to start by asking you, I know you're probably a proponent of this. Would you say that you're a risk-taker? I'm curious.
Yes.
You
yes,
are.
Yes.
I am too.
Yes.
So yeah, you gave me a couple of those choices. I was like, risk taking, and I knew that you're probably a risk taker. Yeah. So I really want to get your take on this, especially when it comes to our mental well-being and the impact that it has. What is your take on what is risk taking, and then how does it affect our mental well-being?
Sure. So risk-taking is actually the ability to see something and have an intimate connection with it to your own sense of beingness, and having that ability to go after it. And it's not always going to be popular or necessarily the avenue that the people surrounding you would go towards. But on the other side of it, there are those who value that and have the same system as you do in it. So the risk is the ability to see something that you desire and the willingness to go forward towards it.
That's really interesting because there have been some risky things that I've done in life and business where I feel like not everyone would have made those decisions. And sometimes I fell on my face. Is that something that you've experienced as well? Like the more risks that you're taking, the more that you're falling? Or how does that play out for you normally?
Yes, it's part of the learning curve, I believe. And it's like if we look at from the time that we're born, we take risks and we don't know that they're risks. We just choose to move forward in them. And in that, we fall down sometimes when we pick ourselves up. I think when it comes to business, as you were speaking about, most often the fear in the risks for most people is uncomfortable because of the fact of the negativities of the failures of the people around you not supporting you or not understanding it. But it's that willingness to get back up. And through that, you build courage and resilience and all of these positive attributes that come along with it.
And that's so true, because when you think about taking risks, like we wouldn't, if you evaluate your life and the amount of risks that you take, if we're not taking any risks, then are we really living? Like, we need the variety in our life. And you're right. I mean, falling down sucks. It's not a pleasant experience, especially when you said if you don't have the support system, if you have people continually telling you, you're going to fail, or something's not going to work, and you go through with it anyways, you evaluate it, and then you decide, oh, I want to move forward, and then you fall you fall and then you have to turn around and look at everyone who was saying, I told you so. I know we've
Right.
all experienced that on some level. Do you think that risk taking is positive for mental health? Do you think it's something that really builds that resilience too? I know you mentioned that earlier, but in what ways do you feel like it does that too?
So here's the thing. I believe with risk taking, there are certain steps that need to be put in place. So
Mm-hmm.
it's not going from point A to point Z all at once. Risk taking involves being able to take a look at all of the steps in between and taking the first step and the next step. And that's what Martin Luther King said, right?
Yeah.
Being able to just take one step at a time. But I think with risk taking, it's knowing where you want to go and starting to take those actionable steps. And some of them are going to be uncomfortable. I call them like zaps. It's like you hit something and it zaps you and you like have to jump back and like, ooh, that didn't feel really good.
Yeah.
And then just sitting and grounding and reevaluating and saying, okay, where's my next step? And allowing those steps to kind of come into play for you. So it's reassessing how we look at what risk taking is and understanding that there is a process to it.
Yeah, that kind of reminds me of like a life strategy, that we set this
Mm-hmm.
strategy for our life and what we expect for our life to play out. And 9 times out of 10, it ends up even being if we surrender, right, and we keep moving forward and listening to our intuition, it ends up even better than what we could have imagined. But we always have to change that strategy. Like it's always going to be stepping back, like you said, stepping back, grounding, reassessing, and then moving forward. Is there a point, like, for example, with risk taking that you feel that, because, I think that I see this happen sometimes, but I don't know if 100% of what it is. But do you feel that it could be harmful to our mental health based on what our patterns are? If there's someone who's like just going all in all the time to the point where they're overtaxing, do you think that it's possible to be able to do that?
If that's detrimental, if that's dangerous.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, that is it's a sign that somebody has a willingness, and it's a sign that
Mm-hmm.
they don't have the right support systems and structures.
Yeah.
So in that, it's about actually what you were saying. It's the pulling back, the settling, and then reassessing and reevaluating how that person wants to move forward. And yes, to your point, doing that over and over again can be very detrimental or the wrong paths forward in a certain sense. The wrong path meaning that the right nutrients, nourishment doesn't come in to support that person on that path, even though it could be the right
Right.
path.
Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
environment could be off, the thought processes could be off, but where they desire to be going in their risks and that value of taking risks are positives.
Agreed. 100% agreed. And I really like
Hmm.
the way you worded that, because our environment is really, really strong in our ability to make things work, to make the things we want happen. And if you have either a person in your home or you just don't have the support system there, you constantly have someone who's telling you that it's not going to work or that's being negative, and you're trying to make these things happen, it's about really reframing that, getting some support people. I'll give you an
Hmm.
example. I mean, as a business owner, and I know you do this too, Monica, because this is how we met, but as a business owner, it could be lonely when you're getting started and you don't really know what to do. You're not really sure where to turn. You're kind of nervous. You're scared. And it's like meeting other people who are doing the same exact things helps significantly to build that support system. What are some other things, Monica, that you have experienced or has been really helpful for you in pertaining to being able to, if they don't have that support system, being able to step forward and really embrace taking the risk?
Mindset work, mindset training.
Yeah.
So reading up and seeing people that have done it already and knowing, even if I'm not in the right environment or the support systems aren't there, knowing that they're out there. It's this deep inner knowing. It's a belief system that they're there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's continuously just, and the other thing too is being receptive. So
Mm,
meeting when meeting people, it's not turning down and shutting off because they don't match or align, or listening to
right.
what they're saying and not, but it's being open and recognizing that there may be a message in that for the person.
Yeah, I love that for sure, because that's an opportunity for growth.
Yeah.
100%. So how do you train your mind, like your train mental health. And is risk an integral part of training your mental health, like training your mind into building yourself up into training that resilience you have as well?
Well, I do. And I believe that so much is talked about fear, and you got to face your fear, and you got to face your fear. And I
Yeah.
think that in of itself can be a little overwhelming or disconnected for people. And so when we look at it from a point of, well, what's the risk you're going to take, or where is it you want to go? And knowing that getting there are going to take some steps to go that you haven't done before, or some steps to do things or go places or hear things or experience things that you haven't done before. So it transforms your emotional body and your emotional systems. And
Yeah.
that's where we actually hold the fear. So when we're able to train that part of us to move forward, we're no longer connected to or have that connection in the fear. So how I do that is I watch a lot of videos that are related to mindset work, very specific and detailed on mindset topics. I read, I journal, and I'm very clear on what it is I'm looking to develop, like what it is I want to experience, the relationships that I want to have, the people that I want to have around me, what that looks like and what that feels like. And I say relationships because everything starts from the ground, and that's how you're supported around you with connections in your
Yeah.
relationships. So for me, it always starts from there before I go forward into that actual risk, like where I'm headed.
Yeah, it sounds like you build a really strong foundation. Like what
Yes.
what popped in my head was building a house, right? And you're not going to put the frame of the house without anything underneath it. I mean, maybe I've gotten better at it, but you're right. That support and building. Okay, what is it that you want? What is it that you need? You mentioned like journaling on it, and it's such a strong believer that journaling is so important because it helps us get everything that's jumbled around up here and just get it on paper, whether we're purging, I call it purging, or
Yes.
going after what you want and being able to just put stuff down. Because if it's all up here, I mean, that can get a little overwhelming.
Right. And there becomes a lot of finding a lot of clarity in that. So as you
Yeah.
start to journal down and write things down and go through experiences, you get clear on what you want and what you don't want. And I believe one of the other things that becomes difficult is being able to focus on the what you want. And even if you see a glimpse of it, focusing on that and holding on to that than all of the like hundreds of negative things that had happened and gone on. And all of a sudden, just that light bulb moment about, wait, this one thing happened correct. Let me focus and go in that direction. And that's also a part of, in a sense, taking a risk, because now you're going outside of your norm of what you had focused on that was so negative, and you're able to laser in on that one thing positive and move in that direction.
Yeah. And it reminds me almost like that tolerance level. The more that you take action, you set the foundation first, like Monica was saying, and
Right.
then set that foundation and then take action. The more that you do that, I mean, I wouldn't say that it gets any, I mean, the fear is still going to be there. There's
Right.
still going to be fear there. And I think how you were saying earlier, like face the fear, or the more you do it, it just goes away. And it's like, you're right. It can be so overwhelming for people. If someone face your fear, I'm like, oh my gosh, what do I do? Like
Right.
it's just one of those things where it's not a good, let's just say, direction, especially if someone's not used to taking risks. If someone just is kind of stepping out and starting to do something new, like they're starting to think new and do new things and like make real changes for their life, that's scary altogether. And so when you're thinking of these like important qualities of leaning in to risk taking, what is just like some tips that you can give people, especially if they're feeling like locked up or if they're feeling, I don't know. What are some things, just some thoughts you'd like to share?
Sure. So this I received through my shamanic training. We look at the four chambers of the heart, and we've got the healer,
Yeah.
the warrior, the teacher, and the visionary. And when those are in the opposite, the healer is wounded, The teacher, the warrior is a victim. The teacher is a martyr, and the visionary is like shut down on it, right? So those are the negative, the shadow sides, they call them, of it. So when I look for, you were asking me almost like strategies or the ways to lean into it, being able to go into warrior and teacher. So teacher is when you stop, pause, step back, and look at all the lessons going on around you with a non-reaction. You see things that are going on that trigger you, that always go on, and you're like, why is this always going on? Why is this happening? And those are sometimes difficult situations to move beyond for what they bring up, fears, discomfort, and all of that. The aspect of the warrior is designed to cut that away. So when we think about what the warrior pose mean, it's very settled, it's very grounded, it's very centered, it's very heart opened.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So if we can find those aspects, and again, this becomes emotional, mental, and physical, all coming together in releasing that charge of where the fear is. So it's very simple, again, as you were saying, for people to say, let go of the fear and release that. And people just jump into something that's an unknown, but the environment and the foundation isn't settled yet.
Right.
Well, there's an issue with that.
Yeah.
Yep. And so it's just a pattern of destruction that occurs on that, because now you're using positive energy, creative energy to try to go out and build something, but you have no place to come back to in that foundation. So the first is the foundation is set. And the next thing is how you see those experiences around you. And then the openness that the letting go of the armor, the letting go of to move forward through it. But that's how you lean in.
Yeah. Oh, letting go of the armor. That's it, right? That I think is surrender. And that's such a letting go and surrendering can be something that's really hard, but it's also just trusting and leaning into yourself and trusting yourself that you've got this. And I just had like this visual of, someone just taking off their armor and just walking forward and being like, well, I know it's going to work. I don't know how, but I know that it's going to work. And it's letting go of that how this is going to work, because I feel like we almost strangle the universe into making things happen for us. And it's like, just know that it's going to happen. And it might not be in the time that you'd like, but that was beautiful. I didn't know you trained as a shaman, by the way. See,
yes.
There's always new things I'm learning about Monica.
Yeah.
There's always new things. Yeah, that's really powerful. We'll have to do another episode just based around that, because that's fascinating for me. Very powerful work. Yeah. So in terms of risk-taking in general, if someone is listening to this and they're like, man, I need to take more risks, because let's face it, if you're not taking risks, your life could be definitely different, right? It could be a different life. There could be things that you don't even know could happen. So what do you recommend for someone if they're like, maybe I should start making some changes? Where should they start with stuff like that?
Right. Well, first I want to say that there are those who are very stable in safety and security. And so the idea of taking risk-taking is just not for them, and letting that be okay. That there's nothing bad or wrong, but it's about how they're going to utilize their energy in positive ways to be living fulfilled, and making sure that their health, mentally, emotionally, and physically, is on point, right?
Yes.
And so if we look at the different layers of how people relate to safety and security, let's go back to there before we tell everyone to start jumping into taking risks. Right? Yeah. So if we look, there's a chart that goes on people's skill levels and challenges. There are those, most of them would be entrepreneurs, that their level of challenge needs to be very high to challenge their skill level. And skill level meaning their creative ability, their ability to do good work, their ability to be out in the world. It's an innate ability that's wired within them. High level of challenge, high level of skill. Those people are pretty much naturally going to be starting to take risks. Right?
That makes sense.
The thing The thing would be if those people were shut down from childhood for being able to do that, they would have a difficult time, most likely, finding a complete path, something that's a stable ground to take those actions in, because they never had positive feedback on the risk they were taking. So their actions, like think about the alphabet, the letters are all scrambled.
Yeah.
So the first thing would be someone who wants to be taking risks to start being able to take smart risks. What does that look like? And that would mean, what's a goal that they want to achieve and attain? Maybe it's well in fitness, maybe it's a new career change. And that would be starting on a regular basis, writing down the ways or the tasks that they can start to integrate those parts of that topic or thing that they want to get involved with, write them down, how they can start taking actions on them.
Yeah.
Maybe it's watching videos, maybe it's going someplace, maybe it's meeting new people, but start writing them down and get the excitement going and put a plan in place where consistency is in place, because consistency will be the key to that.
Yes. Yeah.
So if they want to start taking risks, those are the first things to start putting together. And then you have those people who might want to take some risks, but were never really taught that risks were good and wouldn't really know how or where to go. And they have a strong, stable foundation. They value safety and security, and they're really strong in their well-being. They just feel limited or a little bit deflated because they don't know where to turn on their risks. So for them, to let them know, first off, that risk taking is okay. There's nothing wrong with it. And it might be doing something that's pretty big in a risk taking. So what would that look like? Maybe it's taking a class that they've never dreamed that they would take, or that it would be validated. So validating their concept of taking a risk, letting them know it's okay. Or maybe it's making an investment in something and letting them know that if they trust their inner knowing, if they sit down with themselves, listen to their heart and their gut, if they write it out, that they know that this is what they want to do, good, bad, ugly, indifferent, they step forward into that. That's a way to start, and you build momentum on that. So I think it depends on where somebody is mentally and then physically in terms of how their environment has supported them prior to where they are now in their risk taking.
Yeah. And it's kind of funny that you brought that up, because if there's anyone who's watched every single episode, I'm pretty sure every episode, it always leads back to our childhood. It leads back to our conditioning. Yeah. And it reminds me, right? When I was growing up, risk was not good. Risk was bad. You had to be stable, secure. And so for when you describe kind of the strategy, and I'll share with you what I did to enhance my risk tolerance, was I just started taking smaller risks, and I started in fitness. And I was like, okay, I'm going to run 5Ks, and then that kind of built up my confidence a little more. And then I started expanding that, then eventually doing bodybuilding shows. And that was a big risk for me. That was a big step for me. And then I was like, okay, let me translate this into other categories of my life. So then I started translating it into business. And so that's where I'm at now. I'm like, okay, little risk here and there. And every single time, you meet a goal or you fall down and you have to reassess whatever one that happens, normal, and then building up to it. So the way that you described it, it's funny because it's like verbatim how I did it, but I guess I didn't realize that I was doing it.
Yes. So I was brought up where my risk taking from a very young age was encouraged, because if I would fall down, my mother had been a teacher, and the way she had lived was very much like that. And so it's like, it's okay. And I learned from a very young age. I learned from a very young age that was okay. And so I was accepted in that, being able to do that. And so it carried over into everything that I did.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it really boils down to whatever that was. And it could be as simple as your teacher telling you, be careful, the word be careful. Be careful, careful driving, careful doing this. And everyone's like, oh my gosh, what do I need to be afraid of, right? That word be careful, which I forget who it was I was speaking to before. And they're like, say be aware. Like, be aware of what's around you. And I was like, I like that a lot better. And it all really boils down to that. Our language and our intention and our attitude is so important. So I'm glad that you brought that up too. Yeah. So, Monica, How can
Yeah.
people find you if they want to work with you or if they want to get to know you more? I know you have a running Facebook group that has everything health and wellness. You're really active in the Orlando community. Or if someone just wants to meet up with you and get to know you more about collaborative opportunities, how can they get a hold of you?
Sure. So you can reach me on my website. It's monicaheiz.com, or my email, which is listed there. And I'm on Instagram at Monica Heiz and on Facebook at Monica Heiz. And as Shannon said, I have a couple of Facebook groups that are running. So you're more than welcome to join in those groups. We love to have people come in and pay attention and kind of gain some wisdom and knowledge and light them up for the day and for the week.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm a part of Monica's Facebook group too. And she posts such elaborate content, and that I can tell there's so much thought put into it. And Monica, what I love about it is you really gauge everything spiritual, mental, emotional, physical. You don't just focus on one area of our life, you focus on all areas of it, which is so important because they're all interconnected. They all play off of each other. You can't have one without the other. You have to work towards them all slowly. And it's really great. So thank you for being so active in the community and everything that you do for other people. And thanks so much for joining us today. I will end up putting all of Monica's links down below in the show notes so you can get a hold of her. And thank you so much for joining us in the Well Balanced Mind, and we will see you soon.